Listen, I know it's only the beginning of April, but I do think a lot of you are already missing out on some really good movies this year. And since you guys seem to enjoy my underrated movie recommendations, I thought I would make this into a regular feature. So, every few months, I'm going to talk about some recent releases that seem to be flying under the radar, and this is the first of those videos for 2025. I have 5 movies to talk about today. All of them are either horror or thrillers that I really enjoyed. All of them are actually in my top 10 of the year at the moment. Again, we are not that far into the year. So let's talk about some great movies you probably missed. First up is the most stressful dad movie I have seen in a very long time, Last Breath. This one is still playing in some theaters, but it is also available on VOD. The movie is based on a true story and follows an experienced sea diver who is willing to do whatever it takes to rescue his crewmate who is trapped hundreds of feet below the ocean's surface and is quickly running out of oxygen. And fun fact, there's also a 2019 documentary about this, also titled Last Breath, that is directed by the same man who directed this movie, Alex Parkinson. Guys, this movie had me reminding myself to breathe, which sounds overly dramatic, but I was so locked in and concerned about this rescue mission, I really did forget a couple times. This is the type of solid, gripping thriller you would watch on TV with your family randomly and thoroughly enjoy if you grew up in the 90s or the early 2000s. And I genuinely mean this as a big compliment. You have a great cast with Woody Harrelson, Simu Liu, Finn Cole, and Cliff Curtis. They're all playing these likable, no-nonsense, down-to-earth, get things done type of characters. There is an intense situation unfolding deep underwater in this case, which makes it even more stressful. You're rooting for these guys to succeed. Your anxiety is firing on all cylinders. It's great. I miss seeing more movies like this, and even though it's not a very showy film, it's a simple story that's well made and well paced with a tight 90-minute runtime. What's not to like? Next up is a dramatic thriller that shows its events from 2 different perspectives, and that is Bring Them Down. A movie where a feud between neighbors escalates in the worst ways. Set in rural Ireland, the story revolves around an ongoing rivalry between farmers, and as tensions continue rising, their feud triggers a chain of events that just keep getting more violent and devastating. You can tell things are headed towards something very messy, and both families will have to deal with the consequences. Now, I do have to give you a warning here about animal cruelty in this film. It's there and it's pretty terrible. It's not real, of course, thankfully, but there are parts of this film that are very difficult to watch. I have even seen some people say they were so turned off by those scenes that they could not enjoy the rest of the movie. I do still think the film is very much worth watching, even though those scenes are rough, but you have to know what you're getting yourself into. The way Bring Them Down unfolds is as intense as it is tragic, and I really liked that the nonlinear structure showed how complicated the situation really was. It's a movie that doesn't necessarily take a side, instead letting the viewer understand where both sides are coming from and how they ended up in this mess. Also, Barry Keoghan and Christopher Abbott leading this cast are fantastic, both of them working with characters that have a lot going on under the surface and feeling the responsibility to do what needs to be done for their families, no matter how terrible it is. If you like your thrillers to be bleak and full of personal drama, you cannot miss this one. Now, I actually have 2 Steven Soderbergh movies on this list because somehow both of them aren't getting enough attention, and the first one I'm going to talk about is presence. I swear, he accomplishes more in 85 minutes here with a minimal setup than so many recent movies in over 2 hours. After moving into their new home in the suburbs, a family slowly begins to suspect that they may not be alone in this house. This sounds like a pretty standard supernatural movie setup, but what's really cool about it is that the film is shot entirely from the point of view of the entity. I actually was really surprised how divisive this movie ended up being, and a big part of that is probably on the marketing because Neon, for some reason, insists on advertising all of their horror films as the scariest thing ever, and that's just not true for the most part for most of them, and especially not true for this one. Presence is primarily a dark family drama that revolves around a horror setup, but I did really like the experimental approach to the point of view and making this movie from the perspective of the entity. While not particularly scary, I did find this movie to be eerie, haunting, and sad in a beautiful way. Watching the events unfold through this ultra-wide lens from the perspective of a character the family doesn't see really gave me an uneasy feeling that I was observing something deeply personal. And as I was putting things together through dialogue and figuring out who these characters are, I quickly became very invested in what this family was going through. There is a bit of a meditative quality to some of the scenes, but there are so many details to pay attention to that serve the story, and the movie is so short that it never felt slow. I honestly wouldn't mind if it was longer. For me, Presence was effective, suspenseful, and surprisingly emotional, particularly when it came to the climax and the ending. Definitely very underrated. The other Steven Soderbergh movie I want to talk about is, of course, his spy thriller Black Bag, which is still playing in theaters. It only came out a few weeks ago, but is also already available on VOD. The movie follows a British intelligence officer, George, who is tasked with investigating a list of potential traitors, and one of the suspects is his beloved wife. Now, George faces the ultimate test of loyalty, where he might have to choose between his marriage and his country. I have to say, this movie was simply such a joy to watch. It is a classic spy thriller in the best ways. But do not go into this expecting a lot of action, because this is not about the action. This is about the suspense, the mind games, the characters, the dialogue. I love a good dialogue and character-driven thriller, and Black Bag delivered. This film is smart, sexy, stylish, tightly paced. It's everything I was hoping it would be. And even though it's not too similar, I would say Black Bag would make for an excellent double feature with David Fincher's The Killer. And it's not just because of Michael Fassbender thriving in these roles, although that's definitely a part of it. Speaking of Michael Fassbender, the cast here is amazing and just a pleasure to watch. Him and Cate Blanchett are, of course, excellent and generally relationship goals, but you also have Tom Burke, Naomi Harris, Reggie-Jean Page, Pierce Brosnan. It's a stacked cast, and they're all great. I need mid-budget movies like this to be a regular thing again, because a sleek and clever old school espionage thriller with a stellar cast is the perfect movie to relax with, and Soderbergh directs the hell out of this one. Please do more, sir. Finally, we need to talk about Dead Talents Society, because I'm pretty sure most people don't even know this movie exists. I didn't know this movie existed until Netflix randomly recommended it to me the other day, and I am so glad I was feeling adventurous, because I had so much fun watching it. This is a Taiwanese horror comedy set in what is essentially the underworld where ghosts can linger in the mortal realm by getting a haunting license and competing to haunt humans. The film follows a shy rookie ghost who, under the mentorship of a forgotten diva and her team, must figure out how to scare the living or risk disappearing forever. What's funny is that we've had a good number of horror comedies come out recently, but none of them come close to this one. Dead Talent Society just gets it right. The tone, the characters, the humor, the gore, there is a little bit of crazy gore in this one. It was a delight to watch, and this is actually my favorite movie of the year at the moment. That's how much I enjoyed it. It's definitely weird and quirky, which means it won't be for everyone, and there will be some people who will think a movie set in the world of ghosts where the popularity contest persists into the afterlife, it's just a bit too out there, but this movie is funny, entertaining, and surprisingly heartfelt with charismatic, memorable characters and a surprising amount of quality world building. In this underworld, there are rules, societal structure, economy, awards, celebrities, so many fun details to pay attention to, and it even has a very wholesome message at its core. It's a bit of a found family movie as well. The tone is somewhere between Beetlejuice and Humanist Vampire Seeking Consenting Suicidal Person, which are both movies I love, and I cannot wait for people, especially for horror fans, to discover this currently very hidden gem, because Dead Talent Society is a breath of fresh, ghostly air. But let me know what recent movies you think are flying under the radar at the moment, and if you're looking for even more underrated horror recommendations, check out this video next.